The fluorescent lights of Walmart hummed, casting long shadows across the near-empty aisles. It was late, the kind of late where the air hung heavy with an unsettling quiet. Tonight we delve into 3 chilling encounters, stories whispered in hushed tones of the unsettling side of late-night shopping. These are the tales that remind us that even in the most mundane places, darkness can lurk. These stories are not for the faint of heart. They are tales of ordinary people caught in extraordinary, terrifying circumstances. They are a reminder that the world can be a scary place, even in the brightly lit aisles of your local superstore. Prepare yourself for 3 creepy Walmart encounters that will send chills down your spine. Tonight we venture into the heart of suburban unease, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the familiar transforms into the terrifying. We explore the unsettling side of late-night shopping, where shadows lengthen and whispers echo in the desolate aisles. Join us as we uncover the chilling truths that lie hidden beneath the fluorescent glow of Walmart after dark. We begin with Jane, a young woman whose late-night grocery run takes a sinister turn. Her story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying encounters happen when you least expect them. Her experience will leave you looking over your shoulder, wondering who might be watching you from the shadows.
Jane browsed the aisles, her shopping cart rattling softly. She was alone, or so she thought. A prickling sensation on the back of her neck made her turn. No one was there, just empty aisles and the hum of the refrigerators. She continued her shopping, a growing unease settling in her stomach. The feeling of being watched intensified. She glanced over her shoulder again, her heart pounding in her chest. Still no one, just the endless rows of brightly packaged goods. Jane picked up a box of cereal, her hand trembling slightly. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional distant clang of a dropped item. She felt a chill despite the store's artificial warmth. The air seemed to grow colder, heavier. She decided to finish her shopping quickly. The unease had blossomed into full-blown fear. She grabbed a few more items, her eyes darting around nervously. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, every aisle a potential hiding place. As Jane rounded the corner into the frozen food aisle, she saw him, a tall, shadowy figure standing at the end of the aisle, watching her. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, a silent, menacing presence. Jane froze, her breath catching in her throat. Fear pulsed through her veins, icy and paralyzing. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt like lead. The figure remained motionless, his features obscured by the dim lighting. He was wearing a dark hoodie, the shadow of the hood concealing his face. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets. He seemed to be studying her, his presence radiating a palpable sense of menace. Jane felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She took a tentative step back, her eyes fixed on the figure. He didn't react. He just continued to watch her, his silence more terrifying than any scream. Jane felt trapped, cornered in the frozen food aisle. Jane managed to break free from the frozen food aisle, her heart pounding in her chest. She hurried towards the front of the store, her eyes darting around nervously. She needed to get out, to escape the oppressive atmosphere. She reached the cosmetics aisle, hoping to blend in with the other shoppers, but the aisle was deserted. Only the brightly lit displays and the faint scent of perfume filled the air. The silence was unnerving. As she reached for a lipstick, she saw him again. The same shadowy figure standing at the end of the aisle watching her. He hadn't followed her, he'd been waiting for her. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. Jane felt a surge of panic. She was trapped, cornered. The figure began to walk towards her, slowly, deliberately. His footsteps echoed in the silent aisle, each step a hammer blow against her sanity. The figure stopped a few feet away from Jane, his face still hidden in the shadows of his hood. He was close enough for her to see the glint of something metallic in his hand. A knife? Her blood ran cold. He slowly raised his head, the hood falling back to reveal his face. It was a face she didn't recognize, a face contorted into a twisted, unsettling smile. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural intensity.
"Looking for something?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly whisper.
The words hung in the air, heavy with menace. Jane couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The man took another step closer, the metallic glint in his hand becoming more pronounced. Jane could feel his breath on her face, cold and stale. She closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the next aisle. The The man flinched, momentarily distracted. Jane seized the opportunity, pushing past him and sprinting towards the front of the store. She ran as fast as she could, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. She didn't look back, didn't dare to see if he was following her. She just ran, driven by pure adrenaline and fear. She burst through the automatic doors and into the cool night air. The parking lot was mostly empty, the only sound the hum of the distant highway. She ran towards her car, fumbling with her keys. She jumped into the car, locked the doors, and started the engine. As she sped away, she glanced in her rearview mirror. The man was standing at the entrance of the store, watching her go. His twisted smile was the last thing she saw. Our next story takes us to the toy aisle, where a young girl named Sarah encounters a customer whose gaze lingers a little too long. This encounter, while less overtly threatening than Jane's, is no less unsettling. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most disturbing encounters are those that leave you questioning your own perceptions. Sarah was browsing the toy aisle, her eyes wide with wonder. She was searching for the perfect doll, her small hands reaching out to touch the brightly colored boxes. Her parents were nearby, engrossed in a conversation about household items. Suddenly, she felt a presence beside her. She turned to see an older man standing very close, his eyes fixed on her. He didn't speak, didn't smile, he just stared, his gaze unnerving and intense. Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. The man's proximity and his unwavering stare made her uncomfortable. She took a step back, but the man didn't move. He continued to stare, his eyes following her every movement.
The man was tall and thin, his face pale and gaunt. He was wearing a worn-out suit that seemed too big for him. His eyes were deep-set and dark, and they seemed to bore into me, making my skin crawl. He didn't say anything, didn't even blink. He just stood there, his gaze fixed on me, as if he was trying to see through me. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant chatter of other shoppers. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I wanted to run, to hide, but my legs felt like lead. I was frozen in place, trapped by the man's unsettling gaze. I felt as though I was being scrutinized, dissected. The man's stare intensified, his eyes narrowing slightly. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I had the distinct feeling that I was being watched, not just observed, but watched with a predatory intent. Just as my fear reached its peak, my mother noticed my discomfort. She turned to see the man standing close to me, his gaze fixed on me.
"Is everything all right, Sarah?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. The man's gaze shifted to my mother, his expression unchanging. He didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge her presence.
My father also noticed the situation. He stepped forward, placing himself between me and the man. "Can we help you with something?" he asked, his voice firm but polite. The man remained silent, his gaze flickering between my parents. The man finally broke his silence, his voice a low, raspy whisper.
"She reminds me of someone," he said, his eyes fixed on me. "Someone I lost a long time ago." His words sent a chill down my spine.
Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing of all. It's the story of Mike, a young man whose late-night trip to Walmart turns into a terrifying encounter with his obsessive ex-girlfriend, Lisa. This story is a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest threats come from those we once trusted.
I was browsing the electronics aisle looking for a new video game. I was lost in thought, humming softly to myself. I didn't notice the figure approaching me until it was too late. "Mike?" a voice hissed. I turned to see Lisa, my ex-girlfriend, standing before me. Her eyes were wild, her hair disheveled. Her presence radiated a palpable sense of anger and desperation. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had been actively avoiding Lisa since our messy breakup a few weeks ago. I had changed my number, blocked her on social media, and even started taking a different route to work. I had hoped she would eventually move on. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice strained. I tried to maintain a calm demeanor, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I knew from experience that Lisa could be unpredictable, even violent.
These three encounters, while vastly different, share a common thread. The unsettling feeling of vulnerability, the chilling realization that even in the most mundane settings, danger can lurk. Jane's terrifying encounter with a stalker, Sarah's unnerving experience with a creepy customer, and Mike's harrowing confrontation with his obsessive ex-girlfriend all serve as stark reminders that the world can be a scary place. These stories are not meant to scare you away from your local Walmart. They are meant to remind you to be aware of your surroundings, to trust your instincts, and to never underestimate the potential for darkness, even in the brightly lit aisles of a superstore. As you go about your daily life, remember the chilling tales of Jane, Sarah, and Mike. Remember the unseen watcher in the shadows, the unsettling gaze in the toy aisle, and the obsessive ex lurking in the electronics section. These stories are a testament to the fact that the ordinary can quickly turn extraordinary, and the familiar can become terrifying. Stay alert, stay safe, and remember that even in the most mundane places, the shadows can hold secrets, and sometimes those secrets are best left undisturbed.